Monday morning arrived faster than anyone expected. Madison woke up early, something she never did, and spent 2 hours getting ready. She picked out her most expensive outfit, a designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and made sure her hair and makeup were perfect. Today was the day she would finally get her wild companion. She stood by the front window, watching the long driveway for any sign of arrival. Her parents sat in the living room, both looking nervous. Richard kept checking his phone while Patricia twisted her wedding ring around her finger, a habit she had when she was anxious. "Where is it?" Madison asked impatiently. "He said they would be here by 10, and it's already 10:30. "He'll be here soon," her father said quietly. Madison didn't catch the word "he" because she was too busy imagining how jealous her friends would be when they saw her new exotic pet. She had already planned the perfect social media posts and thought about which angles would look best for photos. At 11 o'clock, a plain white van pulled up to the house. Madison pressed her face against the window, expecting to see some kind of transport cage or special equipment. Instead, a tired-looking woman in a business suit got out of the driver's side. "That must be the delivery person," Madison said excitedly. "Where's the cage?" The woman walked around to the passenger side and opened the door. That's when Madison saw him for the first time. A tall, thin teenager with messy dark hair stepped out of the van. He was wearing old jeans with holes in them, a faded t-shirt, and beat-up sneakers. He carried a small backpack that looked like it had seen better days. Madison blinked in confusion.
"Who is that?"
Her father said, standing up slowly. "Is Jake Morrison." "Your new housemate." "My what?" Madison spun around to face her parents. "That's not what I asked for. I wanted something wild and exciting, not some random kid." "You wanted something that couldn't be bought, trained, or controlled," her mother said carefully. "Well, sweetheart, meet Jake. According to his file, no family has been able to handle him for more than a few months." Madison stared at them in shock. "This is a joke, right? You're pranking me?" The doorbell rang before anyone could answer. Richard went to open it, and the social worker walked in with Jake, trailing behind her. Up close, Madison could see that Jake looked angry about being there. His jaw was clenched, and he kept his eyes on the floor. "Mr. and Mrs. Thornfield," the social worker said with a bright smile, "thank you so much for opening your home. Is Jake Morrison." Jake didn't say anything. He just stood there looking like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. "Hi, Jake," Patricia said gently. "Welcome to our home." Jake's eyes flicked up to meet hers for just a second before looking away again. "Yeah, whatever." Madison was still processing what was happening. "Wait, so you're saying this kid is supposed to be my wild, untamable thing? He's just a person." "A person who has been through 12 homes in 3 years, the social worker explained. "Ooh." Jake has had some challenges adjusting to family life. "I don't adjust to anything," Jake said suddenly, his voice sharp. "I don't plan to start now." The social worker's smile became a little strained. "Jake, we talked about this. Thornfields are giving you a wonderful opportunity." Jake looked around the massive entryway with its crystal chandelier and marble floors. His expression was a mix of disgust and disbelief. "Yeah, wonderful. Just what I always wanted to be some rich family's charity project." "Now, Jake," Richard started to say, but Jake cut him off. "Save it. I know exactly what this is. You people want to feel good about yourselves by helping the poor, troubled kid. Well, here's some free advice. It's not going to work. I'll be out of here in 2 weeks, just like all the other places." Madison was getting more frustrated by the minute. "This is ridiculous. I didn't ask for a person. People are boring. I wanted something exciting." Jake's eyes snapped to her face, and for the first time, he really looked at her. He took in her expensive dress, her perfect hair, and her pouting expression. A slow, cold smile spread across his face. "Oh, I get it now," he said. "Princess here wanted a pet, and Mommy and Daddy brought home a stray kid instead." He looked directly at Madison and added, "Sorry to disappoint you, Princess, but I don't do tricks." Madison's face turned red. "Don't call me Princess." "Why not?" "That's what you are, isn't it? Living in your castle, getting everything you want handed to you on a silver platter. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. I can smell The spoiled rich girl attitude from across the room. The social worker looked horrified. Jake, that's enough. Apologize to Madison right now. No, Jake said simply. The room fell silent. Madison had never met anyone who just refused to do what adults told them to do. It was shocking, and she had to admit a little impressive. After the social worker left, things got worse quickly. Richard showed Jake to his room, the guest bedroom, that Madison had prepared. Jake walked in, looked around at the expensive furniture and decorations, and shook his head. This is ridiculous, he muttered. What's wrong with it? Madison demanded. She had spent hours making the room perfect. It looks like a hotel room. It's all fancy and fake, just like everything else in this place. Madison was offended. I worked. Hard on that room? You worked hard? Jake laughed bitterly. We're at all. We don't have servants. Right. You just have a cleaning lady, a gardener, a cook, and probably someone who picks out your clothes for you. Madison opened her mouth to argue, then realized he was mostly right. That's different. Sure it is, Princess. It's the first dinner. Together was a disaster. Jake showed up 20 minutes late, didn't apologize. Spent the entire meal making sarcastic comments about everything from the fancy plates to the way Madison held her fork. Could you please pass the salt? Madison asked politely. Could you please pass the salt? Jake repeated in a high, mocking voice. What's wrong with your arms? Are they broken from carrying all those shopping bags? Madison slammed her fork down. Why are you being so mean to me? I haven't done anything to you. You exist, Jake said coldly. That's enough. After dinner, Madison cornered her parents in their bedroom. This isn't working. He's horrible. He insults me constantly and acts like following basic rules is beneath him. Maybe this will help you understand what it means to deal with something truly wild, her father said. But I don't want to understand. I want him gone. Well, that's too bad, her mother said firmly. We made a commitment to help Jake for at least 6 months. He stays. That night, Madison lay in bed fuming. She could hear Jake moving around in the room next to hers, probably planning more ways to make her life miserable. This was not what she had wanted at all. Down the hall, Jake was indeed awake, but he wasn't planning anything. He was staring at the ceiling, wondering how long it would take for this family to give up on him like all the others. The princess seemed easy enough to deal with, just keep insulting her until she cried to her parents enough times. He had learned long ago that the fastest way out of an unwanted situation was to make everyone else want you gone more than you wanted to leave. It had worked in every other home, and it would work here too. What Jake didn't know was that Madison was more stubborn than anyone he had ever met. And what Madison didn't know was that Jake's meanness came from years of being abandoned by people who claimed they cared. The real battle was just beginning. Madison Thornfield had never heard the word no in her 17 years of life. Not once. Living in a mansion that looked like something from a fairy tale, with her father owning one of the biggest tech companies in the country, she was used to getting whatever she wanted with just a snap of her fingers. Her bedroom alone was bigger than most people's apartments. Pink marble floors, a walk-in closet that could house a small family, and windows that overlooked perfectly manicured gardens. She had 3 cars waiting for her in the garage, even though she had just gotten her license 6 months ago. Her credit cards had no limits, and her bank account never seemed to run empty. But Madison was bored. Desperately, mind-numbingly bored. She had tried everything: shopping sprees in Paris, private concerts in her backyard, hiring personal chefs to cook whatever crazy food she craved. Nothing excited her anymore. Her friends were just as spoiled and boring as she was. and their conversations always revolved around the same things: clothes, parties, and gossip about people they barely knew. That's when Madison got her brilliant idea. She was scrolling through social media when she saw a video of some celebrity with a pet tiger. The comments were going crazy about how cool and dangerous it looked. Madison's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "I want one," she announced to her parents over dinner that night. Her father, Richard, barely looked up from his phone. "Want what, sweetheart? A tiger? Or maybe a lion? Something wild and exciting? Well, my friends have boring pets like dogs. And cats. I want something that will make people talk." Her mother, Patricia, nearly choked on her wine. "Madison, honey, those are wild animals. They're not pets." "But I saw this celebrity who has one, and it looks so cool. Please, Daddy. You always say I can have anything I want." Richard finally put down his phone and looked at his daughter. Sometimes he wondered if giving her everything had been a mistake, but it was too late to think about that now. "Madison, tigers are dangerous. They could hurt you." Madison rolled her eyes dramatically. "I'm not stupid, Dad. I know they're dangerous. That's what makes them exciting. I'm tired of everything being safe and boring." For the next 3 weeks, Madison didn't let it go. She researched every possible wild animal she could legally own. She printed out pictures and left them around the house. She even found a contact for someone who claimed to sell exotic animals. "What about a wolf?" she suggested one morning at breakfast. "No," her father said firmly. "A bear cub." "Absolutely not." "A panther." "Madison, stop. The answer's no to all of it." Madison slammed her fork down on her plate. "This is so unfair. You guys always say I can have anything I want, but when I actually want something interesting, you say no." Being treated like a little kid, her parents exchanged worried looks. They had created this monster, and now they didn't know how to handle it. "Sweetheart," her mother tried to explain, "it's not about treating you like a child. These animals are genuinely dangerous. People get seriously injured or worse trying to keep them as pets." "So what?" Madison shot back. "At least my life would be exciting for once. Do you know how boring it is being me? I have everything, but nothing means anything because it's all so easy to get." That hit her father harder than he expected. He had worked his whole life to give Madison everything he never had as a child, but maybe he had gone too far. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning when Madison threw what could only be described as the tantrum of her life. She had found another exotic animal dealer online, was ready to wire $50,000 for a tame. A DULT lion. When her parents discovered what she was planning and blocked the transaction, Madison lost it completely. She screamed at them for 2 hours straight, threw things around the house, and even threatened to run away if they didn't let her get her wild animal. "You want something wild?" Her father finally exploded, his patience completely gone. "You want something that can't be bought, trained, or controlled? Fine, Madison. We'll find you something that no amount of money can tame." Madison stopped crying immediately. "Really? You mean it?" Richard looked at his wife, who was staring at him with wide, worried eyes. He had no idea what he was going to do, but he was tired of his daughter's constant demands for more and more extreme things. "Yes," he said slowly. "But when we do this, there's no changing your mind, no complaining when things get difficult. You wanted wild and untamable, so that's exactly what you're going to get." Madison clapped her hands together, suddenly happy again. "Thank you, Daddy. This is going to be amazing. When can we get it?" But Richard wasn't thinking about animals anymore. That morning, buried under a pile of business mail, he had received another letter from the county's social services. They had been sending him letters for months about a program that matched successful families with troubled teenagers who needed temporary homes. The letters usually went straight into the trash. Out. But this time Richard found himself actually reading one. It was about a 17-year-old boy named Jake Morrison. The social worker described him as challenging and difficult to place. He'd been through 12 different homes in 3 years. No family could handle him for more than a few months. Letter mentioned that Jake had been in trouble with the law multiple times, had anger issues, and refused to follow rules or respect authority. Most families who tried to help him gave up within weeks, saying he was impossible to reach. As Richard read the description, a crazy idea started forming in his mind. His daughter wanted something wild and untamable. Maybe he had found Exactly that. Not in the form of a dangerous animal, but in the form of a dangerous teenager who had never learned to trust anyone. Patricia, he called to his wife after Madison had left the room. I think I know exactly what we're going to bring home for our daughter. When he showed her the letter, Patricia's face went pale. Richard, you can't be serious. This boy sounds like he could be genuinely dangerous. So could a tiger, Richard pointed out. At least this way, we might actually help someone while teaching Madison a lesson about what untamable really means. Patricia was quiet for a long time, reading the letter over and over. Finally, she looked up at her husband. You really think this will work? I think our daughter's about to learn that getting what you ask for isn't always what you actually want, Richard said grimly. 3 days later, Richard made the call to social services. The social worker was thrilled that a family like the Thornfields was willing to take on such a challenging case. They scheduled Jake's arrival for the following Monday. Madison spent the weekend preparing excitedly. Having no idea what was actually coming to her house, she cleared out the guest room next to hers, thinking about all the ways she would show off her new wild pet to her friends. She had demanded a beast, and her parents were about to deliver exactly that, just not in the form she was expecting. 2 weeks passed, and the war between Madison and Jake only got worse. Every morning started with some kind of argument. Jake would come down for breakfast late, wearing the same old clothes, and make comments about the fancy food or expensive dishes. Madison would fire back with insults about his appearance or attitude. Her parents tried to keep the peace, but it was like trying to stop a hurricane with an umbrella. Jake broke every house rule they had. Came home after midnight without telling anyone where he was. He left his dirty clothes all over the guest room floor. He ate food straight from containers in the refrigerator and never cleaned up after himself. When Madison complained, he would just shrug and say, "What are you going to do, princess? Ground me?" Madison retaliated by hiding the TV remote, changing the Wi-Fi password, and once even putting sugar in his coffee instead of salt. Their battles were getting more creative and more mean by the day, but something strange started happening around the 3rd week. Madison began noticing things about Jake that didn't make sense with the tough guy image he projected, like how he always made sure to lock his bedroom door at night, even though they lived in one of the safest neighborhoods in the city, or how he flinched whenever someone raised their voice, even when they weren't yelling at him. She also noticed that Jake never talked about his past. Whenever her parents asked questions about his previous homes or his family, he would change the subject or make a joke. For someone who seemed so confident and sarcastic, he was surprisingly secretive about his life. The breakthrough moment came on a Thursday night when Madison couldn't sleep. It was almost 2 in the morning, and she kept thinking about a fight she'd had with Jake earlier about him using her expensive shampoo. She decided to go downstairs and get some water from the kitchen. As she walked past the big windows that looked out onto their garden, she saw a figure sitting on the stone bench near her mother's rose bushes. At first, she thought it might be an intruder, but then she realized it was Jake. He was sitting hunched over with his head in his hands, and his whole body was shaking. Madison stopped in her tracks. She had never seen Jake look vulnerable before. He was always so sharp and defensive, ready with an insult or a sarcastic comment, but right now, he looked like a scared kid. Madison stood there for a minute, not sure what to do. Part of her wanted to just go back upstairs and pretend she hadn't seen anything. Another part of her was curious about what could make the tough. Jake looked so broken. Before she could decide, Jake suddenly looked up, and she could see his face clearly in the moonlight. His eyes were wide and panicked, like he was seeing something that wasn't there. He was breathing fast and shallow, the way people do when they're having a panic attack, without thinking. Madison opened the back door and walked out into the garden. Jake heard her footsteps and quickly tried to wipe his face and act normal. "What do you want, princess?" he said. But his voice was shaky and didn't have its usual bite. Madison surprised herself by not firing back with an insult. Instead, she just stood there looking at him. "Are you okay?" Jake let out a bitter laugh. "Just peachy. Couldn't be better. You don't look okay? Well, thanks for the update. You can go back to your perfect little room now." But Madison didn't leave. Instead, she sat down on the other end of the stone bench, keeping some distance between them, but not abandoning him completely. "I get nightmares too sometimes," she said quietly. Jake looked at her suspiciously. What could little Princess Madison possibly have nightmares about? Running out of Daddy's money? Madison was quiet for a moment. About being alone, about nobody. Really caring about me? They just care about what I can do for them or how I make them look. Jake didn't respond right away. He seemed to be thinking about what she said. That's different, he finally said. But his voice was softer than usual. Is it? You have parents who love you? You have a home? You have everything? I have stuff, Madison corrected. That's not the same thing. They sat in silence for a while. Madison could see that Jake was still struggling with whatever had brought him out here in the middle of the night. Do you want to talk about it? She asked. Talk about what? Whatever made you come out here. Whatever's making you shake. Jake was quiet for so long that Madison thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I dreamed about the group home again. It's the one I lived in when I was 14. Madison waited for him to continue. There. Were these older kids there who, let's just say, they weren't very nice to the younger ones? They had this game where they would wake you up in the middle of the night and mess with you just to keep you scared and on edge. Madison felt her stomach drop. That's horrible. The worst part wasn't even what they did. It was knowing that the adults who were supposed to protect us either didn't care or were too overwhelmed to notice. I learned real quick that the only person you can count on is yourself. Is that why you're so mean to everyone? Madison asked. 'Cause you think they're going to hurt you first? Jake looked at her with surprise. I'm not mean. I'm realistic.
Ow.
You called me a spoiled brat on your first day here. 'Cause you are. A spoiled brat. Madison laughed despite herself. Okay, fair point, but you're also kind of a jerk. Also fair. They sat quietly again, but this time the silence felt different. Less hostile, more thoughtful. Can I ask you something? Madison said, You're going to ask anyway. Why did you end up in foster care? What happened to your real family? Jake's jaw tightened. My mom was more interested in her boyfriends than in taking care of a kid. Child services took me away when I was 12. She didn't even try to get me back. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm better off without her. But Madison could hear the pain in his voice, even though he was trying to hide it. For what it's worth, she said, I know what it feels like to have parents who don't really see you. Your parents adore you. They adored the idea of me. The perfect daughter who makes them look good. But they don't actually know who I am or what I want. Sometimes I think if I wasn't their biological kid, they would have gotten rid of me by now too. Jake studied her face in the moonlight. That's a pretty dark thing for a princess to say. Maybe I'm not as much of a princess as you think. And maybe you're not as much of a jerk as I thought, Madison admitted. Jake almost smiled. Don't get carried away. I'm still pretty much a jerk. Yeah, but now I know why. They talked until the sun started coming up, sharing stories they had. Never told anyone else. Madison told Jake about how lonely she felt despite being surrounded by people all the time. Jake told Madison about some of the families he had lived with and why he always ended up leaving. By the time they went back inside, something had shifted between them. They weren't friends exactly, but they weren't enemies anymore either. They had seen past each other's defenses to the scared, lonely kids underneath, and for the first time in years, both of them felt like maybe, just maybe, they weren't completely alone in the world. After their late-night conversation in the garden, Madison and Jake started treating each other differently. The constant insults stopped, replaced by something that almost looked like friendship. Madison would save Jake's food when he came home late from his part-time job at a local garage. Jake would help Madison with her math homework, discovering that he was actually really good at explaining complicated problems. Their parents noticed the change and were relieved. Richard started bragging to his business partners about how well their project was going. Patricia began planning ways to show off their success to her charity friends. Neither parent realized they were making a huge mistake. The trouble started when Madison's old friends came over for the first time since Jake had arrived. Ashley, Brooklyn, and Chloe had been Madison's closest friends since middle school, but they were also some of the most judgmental people in their private school. So where is he? Ashley asked, looking around the mansion like she expected Jake to jump out from behind a curtain. Who? Madison asked, though she knew exactly who Ashley meant. The charity case your parents brought home? Everyone at school is talking about it. They say he's some kind of criminal. Madison felt her cheeks burn. He's not a criminal. He's not a charity case. His name is Jake, and he's actually really smart. Brooklyn laughed. Oh my God, Madison. You're defending him. You have a crush on the poor kid? It's not like that, Madison said quickly. We're just ... We understand each other. Understand each other. Chloe rolled her eyes. Madison, he's from a completely different world. You guys have nothing in common except living in the same house? Before Madison could respond, Jake walked through the front door. He'd just finished his shift at the garage and was covered in motor oil and grease. His hair was messy, and his old work clothes were even more worn out than usual. Madison's friends went silent, staring at Jake like he was some kind of exotic animal. Jake noticed the stares and immediately put his defensive walls back up. Well, he said with his old sarcastic tone, the princess is having a tea party. How lovely. Jake, these are my friends, Madison said, hoping to smooth things over. Friends, Jake repeated, looking at the three girls in their designer outfits and perfect makeup. Right, let me guess. You all go to the same fancy private school? Drive cars that cost more than most people make in a year and have never worked a day in your lives. Ashley's mouth dropped open. Excuse me, you heard me? I can spot entitled rich kids from a mile away. You're all exactly the same. How dare you, Brooklyn said, standing up. You don't even know us. I know enough. I know you're all here to gawk at the poor foster kid like I'm some kind of zoo animal. I know you're probably going to go back to your little school and gossip about how weird it is that Madison is living with someone like me. Madison could see the situation spiraling out of control. Jake, stop. They're not like that. But it was too late. The damage was done. Her friends were offended and angry, and Jake was back to being hostile and defensive. After her friends left, Madison was furious. Why did you do that? They weren't trying to hurt you, weren't they? Jake shot back. I saw the way they looked at me, like I was dirt on their expensive shoes. Maybe they were just curious. Not everyone is out to get you, Jake, right? And I'm sure when they go to school tomorrow, they'll tell everyone what a great guy I am. And Madison wanted to argue, but deep down she knew Jake was probably right. Yet, friends would definitely gossip about this. Things got worse over the next few weeks. Word spread around Madison's school about Jake, and the stories got more exaggerated with each telling. Some people said he was a gang member. Others claimed he had been in juvenile detention. Madison tried to defend him, but it was like fighting a wildfire with a water bottle. The breaking point came when Richard announced his big plan. His company was hosting a charity gala to raise money for programs that help disadvantaged youth. He wanted Jake to be the guest of honor, the success story that would inspire donors to give more money. It'll be perfect, Richard explained. To his family, over dinner, Jake can give a speech about how this program changed his life. It'll show everyone what we can accomplish when we invest in these kids. Madison watched Jake's face go completely cold. You want me to perform like a trained seal for your rich friends? Jake, it's not like that, Patricia said gently. We want to celebrate your progress. You've been doing so well in school, and you've been helping at the community center. You should be proud of what you've accomplished. What I've accomplished? Jake's voice was getting louder. You mean what you've accomplished? You get to feel good about yourselves for saving the poor foster kid. Get to show off to all your friends about how generous and caring you are. Not fair, Richard said. We genuinely care about you. Do you? Or do you care about how good it makes you look to help me? Madison could see where this was heading, and she tried to intervene. Jake, maybe we could find a different way to do this. Something that doesn't make you feel like you're on display. But Jake was past listening. You know what the worst part is? I actually started to believe you people might be different. I thought maybe this family actually cared about me as a person, not just as a project. We do care about you, Madison said desperately. Then why didn't you stand up for me when your friends were here? Why didn't you tell them to stop looking at me like I was some kind of freak? Madison felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. I didn't know what to say. Of course you didn't, because deep down, you're just like them. You're just better at hiding it. That night, Jake didn't come home. Madison waited up until 3 in the morning, checking her phone and looking out the window. Her parents called the police, but there wasn't much they could do. Jake was 17, and he hadn't actually committed any crime by leaving. The next morning, Madison found a note on her pillow. It was written on a piece of paper, torn from a notebook, in Jake's messy handwriting. "Princess, thanks for the reality check. I almost forgot that people like you and people like me don't actually mix. Don't worry about me. I've been taking care of myself a lot longer than I've known you. Maybe your parents can find a different charity case to show off at their fancy party. Someone who's better at playing the grateful victim role." Jake Madison read the note 3 times before it really sank in. Jake was gone. Really gone. It was partly her fault. She spent the rest of the day crying and calling everyone. She could think of who might know where Jake had gone. She drove around the city looking for him, checking the garage where he worked, the community center where he volunteered, anywhere she could think of. But Jake had vanished as completely as if he had never existed. And Madison realized that in losing him, she had lost the only person who had ever really understood her. The only person who had seen past her princess act to the real girl underneath. For the first time in her life, Madison understood what it felt like to lose something that couldn't be bought, replaced, or fixed with money. And it was the worst feeling she had ever experienced. Madison didn't sleep for 3 days after Jake left. She kept thinking about his note and the look on his face when her father talked about the charity gala. She realized that Jake was right. Her family had been treating him like a success story. Instead of a real person with real feelings, but instead of just feeling sorry for herself, Madison decided to do something about it. The first thing she did was cancel the charity gala. When her father protested, Madison stood up to him in a way she never had before. "Dad, we messed up. We treated Jake like he was a pet project instead of a human being. If you really want to help kids like him, then actually help them. Don't just use them to make yourself look good." Richard was shocked. His spoiled daughter had never talked to him like this before. "Madison, I don't understand what's gotten into you." "What's gotten into me is that I finally met someone who told me the truth about myself. Instead of listening, I let my pride get in the way." Madison spent the next week researching everything she could about foster care and programs for teenagers who were aging out of the system. What she found made her angry and sad at the same time. Kids like Jake were basically thrown out on the street when they turned 18. No family support and no resources to help them succeed. That's when Madison made a decision that shocked everyone, including herself. She went to the bank and withdrew almost all of the money from her trust fund. Money that was supposed to pay for her college and her future. Then she used that money to start a real program for foster teens, not the fake charity stuff her parents usually supported. She rented a small building in the part of town where Jake used to live. She hired social workers who actually cared about helping kids instead of just collecting paychecks. She set up job training programs, tutoring services, and most importantly, a place where teenagers could go when they had nowhere else to turn. But Madison didn't stop there. She also started volunteering at the local homeless shelter, trying to find Jake, or at least get information about where he might have gone. Most of the people there wouldn't talk to her at first. They could tell she was rich and privileged. They didn't trust her motives. It took weeks of showing up every day, serving food and cleaning bathrooms before people started to accept that she was serious about helping. And it was there, after 2 months of searching, that Madison finally got her first real lead about Jake. An older man named Tony, who had been living on the streets for years, mentioned seeing a teenager who matched Jake's description. "Kid's been staying in the abandoned warehouse district," Tony told her. "Real quiet, keeps to himself. But I've seen him helping some of the younger kids who end up out there." Madison's heart started racing. It sounded exactly like something Jake would do. She found Jake on a cold Tuesday evening, sitting outside a fast food restaurant with 2 younger teenagers, a boy and a girl who couldn't have been more than 15. Jake was sharing his food with them and explaining something about how to stay safe on the streets. When he saw Madison walking toward him, Jake's whole body tensed up. "What do you want, princess? I want to talk to you." "There's nothing to talk about. Go back to your mansion and leave me alone." But Madison didn't leave. She sat down on the sidewalk next to them, ignoring the dirt and the cold concrete. "I'm not going anywhere until you listen to me." Jake laughed bitterly. What could you possibly have to say that I want to hear? That you were right. About everything. About my parents, about me, about the way we treated you? Jake looked surprised, but he tried to hide it. So what? You want a medal for finally figuring out the obvious? No, I want to show you something. Madison pulled out her phone and showed Jake pictures of the center she had opened. She explained about the programs she had started and the kids she was trying to help. This is nice and all, Jake said when she finished, but it doesn't change anything between us. You still let your friends treat me like garbage. You still didn't defend me when it mattered. You're right. I was a coward. I was so worried about what people would think, that I forgot to care about what you were feeling. Jake was quiet for a moment. Why are you really here, Madison? It was the first time he had used her real name instead of calling her princess. Because I miss you, she said simply. Because you were the first person who ever saw the real me, and I threw that away because I was scared and stupid. The real you is a spoiled rich girl who's never had to work for anything in her life. Madison nodded. You're right about that, too. But maybe that's not all I am. Maybe I can be better than that. Over the next hour, Madison told Jake about everything she had been doing since he left. She talked about the center, about volunteering at the shelter, about standing up to her parents for the first time in her life. Why should I believe any of this? Jake asked when she finished. Because I'm not asking you to come home with me. I'm not asking you to forgive me or give me another chance. I'm just asking you to let me prove that I meant what I said. Jake studied her face, looking for signs that this was all just another game. What do you mean? Come see the center. Meet the kids I'm working with. See for yourself if this is real. Or just another rich girl trying to feel good about herself. Jake was suspicious, but he was also curious. Against his better judgment, he agreed to go with Madison the next day. The center was small and nothing fancy, but it was clean and welcoming. Madison introduced Jake to the staff and the teenagers who were participating in the programs. Jake was impressed, despite himself. These were real people doing real work. Not just rich people playing at charity, but what really convinced Jake was when one of the younger kids, 15-year-old named Tyler, recognized him from the streets. Jake, what are you doing here? Tyler asked excitedly. I don't know this guy, Tyler told Madison. He's the one who taught me how to find the best places to sleep when it's cold. And he stopped those older guys from messing with me and Riley last month. Madison looked at Jake with new respect. Even when he was struggling himself, he had been taking care of other people. You've been helping kids this whole time, she said. Jake shrugged, embarrassed. Someone has to. Then help me do it right. Help me make this place what it should be. It took time, but slowly Jake began to trust that Madison's change was real. He started coming to the center regularly, first just to help out, then as an official volunteer. His experience on the streets made him incredibly valuable in reaching kids. Didn't trust adults or authority figures. Madison, meanwhile, continued to prove that she was serious about changing. She enrolled in community college to study social work. She gave up most of her expensive lifestyle, choosing to put her energy and resources into the center instead of shopping and parties. 6 months after Jake first left, he moved back in with the Thornfield family. But this time, things were different. Madison's parents had learned to see Jake as a person rather than a project. Madison had learned to see beyond her own privilege to the real world around her. And Jake had learned that not everyone who claimed to care about him would eventually abandon him. Some people, if you gave them the chance, would actually stick around and prove their love through actions, instead of just words. The center grew and helped dozens of teenagers over the next year. Jake graduated high school with honors and got accepted to college on a full scholarship to study engineering. Madison found her calling in social work and discovered that helping other people made her happier than any expensive purchase ever had. They were both still strong-willed and independent. They still argued sometimes and challenged each other constantly. But they had learned that being untamable didn't mean being alone. It meant being brave enough to be yourself, with someone who cared enough to stick around even when things got difficult. Madison had asked for something wild and untamable, and she had gotten exactly that. Just not in the way she had expected. She had gotten someone who challenged her to be better, who refused to let her stay comfortable in her privileged bubble, who loved her not for what she could give him, but for who she chose to become. And Jake had found something he never thought he would have. A real home with people who saw his worth and weren't going anywhere.